Any questions?
Yes. Not exactly questions, like I was thinking while I was meditating about a few points that I wonder if there is like there is a trying to do to motivate us to live a spiritual life, to be good people, to have good feelings, and it's actually death is coming is like a reason to motivate, because for me to live a spiritual life, to have good thoughts, it's a good advice with no connection to death. I was thinking about that. Another thought, what happened if death would be very sudden and let's say in an airplane crash or just accident or very sudden, and it's not, I don't know, so it was a thought, what happens then? And then you talked about being wealthy. Is it good? Is it going to help me in death? So I think if I'm going to be wealthy, yeah, probably it will help me to have a good death. If I can control it, of course, because if it's sudden death, nothing will help. But I can have much more comfortable death if I have money, and so I was thinking about these.
Lots of things.
Yes.
So the first thing you were saying, I didn't completely understand. You're saying that you don't need to think about death in order to be motivated to help others,
Right,
and so on and so forth. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely possible, that people just want to do good and help others in their life and so on, and don't need thinking about death to motivate them to that. But I think for many people, thinking about death is helpful, because a lot of people do, in our culture, our society and so on, does try to sweep death under the carpet and not think about it. So it's like a big wake-up call when you,
right.
Wow, this life isn't going to go on forever, and if I do want to help the world and do good things and so on, I better get going. Because there's this problem of procrastination that often happens, that people have these wonderful ideas about what they want to do with their life, all these wonderful things they want to do, and so on and so forth, but then they may put it off. Oh, first I need to do this, I'll do that later, yeah? So there's a danger there, because we don't know how much time we have. So that's actually one of the points I kind of skipped over, that if there are important things that we want to do before we die, we better make sure we do them now and not procrastinate. So that's a benefit in thinking about death. And yeah, I mean, the meditation on death is in the first part of the Lamrim, the stages of the path, which is it's called the small scope, initial scope. And this is for people mainly who, they're really caught up with just this life. This life is all there is and all that's important, and never think, very rarely think about death. So focused on this life and career and job and family and da-da-da-da-da, and it's as if I'm going to go on forever. So I think for many people it's like that. So it is very helpful to realize, no, you don't have all the time in the world. It's going to end at some point. And it could be any day. Not when you're 80 or 90, but, this year even. So I think it's a very powerful meditation to really help you make sure that you do what's important to do while you still have time. And then the second thing, I forgot now. What was the second? Oh,
If death is sudden.
Oh, if death is sudden. Yeah, well, so what are you saying? If death is sudden, then there may not be time to do a practice to prepare for it?
don't know. It's just I was wondering
Yeah, that is a concern.
if death
But
can't
again-
be peaceful.
No, I think if you have been practicing and you're familiar with practice, even if you only have a few seconds.
Right.
Because I had an experience once where I was almost in a car accident. I was in the back seat, somebody else was driving, we were driving on ice, and we suddenly started spinning. And we could have had, a real big crash. Fortunately, we didn't. But without even thinking about it, I just started saying the mantra of Tara. It was just coming out of my mouth, Om Tara Dharita, Om Tara Dharita. So, without me having to think, oh, I might die, what should I do? It just was automatic. And I was glad to see that I had made myself that familiar with practice, that it would just come up automatically.
Why Tara? Why Tara?
I don't know. I mean, at that point in my life, I was doing
okay.
practice, and I often,
Yeah, it happens
when
to
there
me
was
too.
scary
It happens to me
situations,
too.
difficult situations, I would just think
Right,
of Tara.
same
They do
mantra.
say she's the swift one. Anyway, I
Okay.
just felt it good. So it could be any deity. It could be Buddha. It could be medicine Buddha. It could be mindfulness. It could be loving kindness.
Right.
So just some kind of practice that is so familiar that it'll just be there. Stephen Levine, I don't know if you've heard of him. He
Yeah,
just
I
passed
heard
away.
about him.
Yeah, he was one of the earliest American people to start doing meditation. And he did a lot of work with dying people.
Right.
Then wrote some books about working with dying people. And in one of his books, he says that in at least one of the Native American traditions, they have what they call a death chant. And the members of the tribe at a certain age, maybe when they're teenagers, they are taught this death chant. It's like a mantra, it seems. And they learn it, they recite it, and they use this when they're in a scary situation, when they get lost in the wilderness or they're facing a dangerous animal or whatever. They use the death chant, they recite it to keep their minds calm and be able to get
There is
through
something
that
like this in Judaism too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shema is Shema.
But the real
I
point
see.
of the death chant is to use it at the time of death.
Yes.
It's like a mantra that you recite as you're dying and helps you to stay calm. So, I think it's similar that we in Dharma are trying to learn some kind of practice that becomes so familiar, it'll be there. Even if we're in a plane crash or car crash,
Right.
heart attack, the mind will just switch that on. Now is the time for that. Yeah?
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's a question of practice. If in your life you're practicing, you're training, you're getting really familiar with that, and especially when you do find yourself in scary situations or troubling situations, instead of freaking out or, you use practice, then you're training yourself to do that. That becomes an automatic response. So then the third one was about wealth. Yeah, I didn't mean to say being wealthy is a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be very helpful, yeah. Because if you're homeless, then hard to have a nice, peaceful death unless your mind is very, spiritually trained. But the point is to realize, because people tend to be attached to their wealth, and that can be a problem at the time of death. Oh, I don't want to let go of this. What's going to happen to my money? Your mind can get hung up thinking about your wealth and feeling sad that you have to leave it all behind. So that can make it hard to die peacefully. I mean, ideally, when we die, we should be able to let go of everything, not be attached to anything. I didn't mention that, but with those three things, our loved ones, family and friends, our possessions, our wealth, and our body, we tend to be attached to these things. And the more attachment we have, the harder it will be to let go at the time of death. So, again, contemplating how we have to leave all these things behind, we can't take them with us, will help us while we're still alive to start to prepare for that, to let go of our attachment. So, I mean, if you can have wealth and not be attached to it, fine, no problem. But if you have attachment to your wealth, and also one Lama said, it's very good, and most people do this anyway, to make a will. You don't have to be old to make a will. You can be young, anytime in your life. But making a will is very helpful, because then you've already decided, you put it down on paper in a legal document, where your wealth or possessions are going to go, and then you don't have that concern in your mind as you're dying. So does that answer the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I'm actually very calm when I think about death, and my father died not long ago. But when something hurts, or one of the parts of my body, when I get sick, it stresses me. So yeah, there's a lot of, I needed to do a lot of work still.
Me too. I'm not good with pain, so that's still a fear that I have. But they do say in hospice that hospice and palliative care, that they have developed and this is something they're trying to do, to administer pain medication to people.
Yeah.
Just enough so that the pain
they won't
is
suffer.
Not unbearable, but the person can still be conscious. Because this is another thing people are concerned about. They don't want to be drugged out. They want to be conscious.
Right.
Be able to think of your practices and so on. So there is that. If you do have access to good hospice and palliative care.
I think you have to ask for this special, because otherwise you get drugged. Yeah.
Right.
This is the default. It's getting drugged and into sleep, and it's not clear mind.
Well, it depends.
That's usually in hospice or home hospice or medical care or hospitals and so on, oncologic departments and so on.
Yeah, but I guess there's a difference if you're dying in a hospice or under the care of hospice as opposed to a normal hospital.
Usually you go into sleep by medicines and so on.
Right,
so
morphine.
It's not clear mind if we are talking about clear mind.
Yeah, but you can also make, I mean, I don't know how this country is, but what they call a living will.
Yes.
Or advanced directive. I think that's another term for it, where you make a document where you explain what you want and what you don't want.
Yes.
It's a really good thing to do. Can you do that here?
Yes, my mother did.
Yeah. So there you can specify. So even if you're not in a very good state of mind, getting close to death, you've already said, I don't want to be drugged. I don't want to be kept alive on machines. I don't want to be resuscitated. If
Yeah.
So that's really helpful if you specify beforehand.
Well, can you make your meditation beforehand and then get the drugs?
But if you're in a lot of pain, then it can be hard to meditate. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fear that I have, because if there's a lot of pain, then it's difficult to not focus on anything other than the pain, and pain makes you unhappy and angry and bad-tempered. So learning how to manage pain. But again, this is something we can do in our life when we have pain, when we're sitting, for example, meditation.
Right.
Learn to manage pain. And there are ways we can do that. There's a very helpful practice in a book called Mindfulness in Plain English by Bhante Gunaratana, who's a Theravada teacher in America.
Can you say again the name?
It's called Mindfulness in Plain English. The book has been around for ages. It's a very, very popular book. Maybe it's even in Hebrew. And it's about mindfulness, but a lot of different, many different aspects. And there's a whole section in there on pain. I can email it to Tal. I have just that section of the book. It's a meditation, a practice you can do when you have pain, dealing with the pain. And it can be really, really helpful. I don't have too much pain, but I remember one time I'd had a headache for a couple of days and nothing made it go away. And one night I was trying to go to sleep, but it was hard to go to sleep because of the pain in my head. And I used this practice. So it kind of just focusing on the pain and then relaxing physically, relaxing mentally. And sometimes, it doesn't always work, but it just disappears. It just goes away. So anyway, I'll send it to Tal and you can share it with the others. Or get the book if you can. It's actually available, I think, an earlier version of the book. If you just type in Google Mindfulness in Plain English, I think you can get the whole book PDF. Maybe. Do you have a question?
I had another issue when you're talking about attachment, not so much to wealth or letting that go, but I've experienced death from, my mother died when I was 15, my husband passed away about 13 years ago, and so I've been the survivor of death, and my fear more about death is for my kids, even though they're adult kids, to be the survivors. Because my experience is being the survivor sucks. It's a lot easier to die because then your pain is gone and everything is gone. But the person who survives.
So you're concerned about your kids when you die and the suffering that they will experience. Yeah, that's, I haven't really thought about that.
My fear is more for their survival than after my going.
But when you say survival, you're probably talking not just about
Emotional survival.
the emotional survival. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting point. It makes me wonder, are there things you can do to help prepare them so that they won't suffer so much after you pass away? Any ideas about that? Any experience with that?
I completely identify with you because both my parents are dead, many of my friends and stuff. And what worries me about that as a Buddhist is that what's left over. So, and my kids know it. They're not young now, but it's been since a very young age, regardless of Buddhism. If you send them, frequently the message that you're really content with your life and there's a moment to go, just bring it in many ways in everyday life. Even joke about it maybe a little, but still let them understand that you are not afraid to die and that they should carry on in whatever they do and just make sure that they get the message somehow. It really helps you and them. And it works because last week I had a long talk with my daughter, she's 32 years old. We were talking about future financial plans and stuff. And she told me, well, Mom, 10 years from now, you could travel the world without work, and stuff like that. And I told her, Nitzan, for all I know, I can die tomorrow. No, you can't. When I have kids, you have to start saying, Nitzan, don't rely on that. I could die tomorrow. And so it's a subject that you have to talk about. It helps a lot. My mom did it with me before she died. It helped.
And my mother denied that she was dying.
That's happened with my father, so I know the other. It's worse. That's a very big.
Yeah.
When someone that's dying denies it, or so it leaves you, with a. Yeah. So my worst fear is just, as you said, I don't fear to die, I don't mind dying, but what will happen, you know. So,
Yeah, don't you think that in a situation where death is like a taboo subject, nobody wants to talk about it, that makes it a lot more scary?
of course,
And then maybe they want to bring it up, but they're afraid of bringing it up because they don't want to upset you. You might want to bring it up because, but you know, you don't want to upset them. So if people are feeling like that, it's very uncomfortable. Whereas if it can be accepted, talked about in a very open way, and I think what you say is very good, that if you can show them that you accept it, you're not afraid, you're ready, well, I don't know, ready is the right word, but yeah, that you are comfortable with it, that will help them. I think that's very important.
and sometimes kids ask you, my son asked me after my father died, he was in first grade, Mom, are you gonna die? And I said, yeah, sure. Am I gonna die? So I said, yeah, sure. We don't know where, we don't know when. Everyone dies in the end. And it's somehow calmed him down. Like it's something, so if you're not afraid to talk about it and to approach it, then it travels, you know, through the generation. I don't know how to explain it, but it's not an issue, you know.
There were sometimes my daughters had some, I was talking to them about some things, and my older one who has fears was like, is there a reason you're discussing it? And I said, no, precisely because there is no reason that I'm discussing it.
Great.
But so you know what I want.
Yeah, I had the same thing, because they're so anxious and there's, yeah. So you see that, that's exactly the way. If we are not afraid.
But we also have to accept that we can't change other people's minds. So if there is a person who is afraid and in denial, doesn't want to talk about it, and so on, we can't force that. You know, we can't force them to change. We can try, but we just have to accept that's where they're at. So I mean, one thing I've learned in my experience is, you know, we can't change other people's minds. We might wish them to be different than they are, but we can't make that happen. Even the Buddha, you know, there's stories about some of the followers of the Buddha who were right there with him, and he was this enlightened being, but they were stuck in negative states of mind, and you know, and he couldn't go into their minds and change them. So I say that to myself, if even the Buddha can't change other people's minds, how can I expect myself to do that? So I've learned to just, I try, of course, I try to help people have a better state of mind, but I can't force that, I can't make that happen. So at a certain point you just have to let go and feel I did the best I could, but now it's up to them. And maybe they'll change later, there's always that possibility. They're not changing right now, but maybe later they will. Okay. So should we have a break now?